Broadcast is set.
Thank you. Welcome to the Policy and Governance Committee meeting, March 29th, 2022, and it is now 5:01. I call to order the March 29th, 2022 Policy and Governance Committee meeting. Welcome and opening remarks from the chair. And good evening. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate the time that you've given to policy and governance. And I appreciate all who participated in the board meeting last Thursday. And I appreciate all that we accomplished. And to board member, Vice Chair Boozer Struthers, and to our student board member, Alvaro, thank you so much for the bills that we moved forward. I appreciate it. Now, moving on, we will now have introductions of committee members, starting with board members, administrative staff, and board office staff. In that order, please.
All right. Hi, I'm Pamela Boozer Struther, Vice Chair of the Policy and Governance Committee and board member for District 3.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alvaro Ruiz. I'm our student member of the board and a member of the Policy and Governance Committee.
Madam Chair.
Oh, Dr. Juanita Miller. I'm an ex officio member of Policy and Governance Committee.
Thank you. And Ms. Robbins, you can start with the administration.
Good evening. I'm Robin Walsh, and I'm the Director of Compliance and Ethics.
Okay, Mr. Walker, you want to introduce yourself?
Good evening. My name is Jason Walker. I do building automation with Prince George's County Public Schools.
Thank you. And Ms. Alston?
Good evening, board members. My name is Jamie Alston. I serve with the Division of Supporting Services, Department of Building Services as Management Analyst.
Okay, and I see Ms. Sally Robinson from the administration. Do you want to introduce yourself? Ms. Robinson?
Good evening. My name is Sally Robinson. I'm with the Office of General Counsel.
Thank you. 1.4. Okay. 1.3, adoption of the meeting March 29th, 2022 agenda. Colleagues, before I entertain a motion to approve the agenda, I would like to add a discussion item 4.4 to allow student board member Saron Ruiz to talk about House Bill 797. So now, may I have a motion to approve the March 29, 2022 meeting agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second?
Yeah.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions, any nays? The agenda is approved. Thank you. 1.4, approval of committee minutes, March 15, 2022. May I have a motion to approve the March 15, 2022 meeting minutes?
So moved.
Okay.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor? Aye.
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 No abstentions. Thank you so much. And the motion passes. 2.1 and 2, public comment. There are no registered public speakers this evening. 3.0, policies for review for action. 3.1, new policy, pregnancy and parenting students. I will yield the floor to Ms. Welch for an overview of the new policy.
Board member Mickens-Murray, Miss Irvin is trying to get on, and she says no one's letting her in.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I wanted to let you know she is trying to get in.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Ms. Ellis?
There's nothing to let her. Don't have a waiting room set up, everyone. I gave her the link. I can send it to her again.
Please send it to her again. Thank you, Ms. Welch.
Okay, she had just texted me to say she can't get in, so that's why I wanted to let you know.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, so we have it, as you see on the agenda, the proposed board policy, pregnant and parenting students. And this is actually in accordance with sections 4139 and 7301.1 from the education article. This is a law that required Maryland State Department of Education to develop a model policy for the local education agencies then to develop their own policies. So the policy that you see on board docs tonight is basically includes the major points from that model policy that is required. And I'll just go over quickly what they consist of. One is the definition of a parenting student, and that goes back to actually Board Member Micklin-Murray's question the last meeting where you asked, is it just females or males? And so it's actually, when they're saying parenting student, it could be the mother or the father or a guardian, whoever, as you know, that is they're talking about. And then there's a whole section that they talk about excusing lawful absences. And they're already in place. We have an administrative procedure that also already discusses all the things that we allow pregnant students or parenting students to be have a lawful absence for, like doctor's appointments, you know, when they have the baby, those kinds of things. It also requires that we include excusing when the student has out, let's say, for a class period because of using the lactation space, then that would be an excused absence also. And then it also discussed, and you'll see in the policy, where allowing pregnant or parenting students to make up work when they're absent and different types of ways that they can make the work up. And then the other piece has to do with designating a private lactation space in the school with specified requirements. And then the other important thing is to designate at least one staff member per school to be there to support the student and hook the student up with resources in the community, say for daycare, possibly communication, those kinds of things. Then there is a requirement in the policy that talks about professional development, because staff, administrators, and school staff need to be informed about what things we need to have in place for our students. And then this policy also has to be published in our Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. So those are the main points that you'll see in the policy, which are really a replica of what is in the model policy.
Okay. Is that policy close to being ready to go for public comment or not?
It is ready, unless there's any, it's for you to take action tonight. And if you're okay with it, then it would move forward to the Board of Education for public comment.
Okay, are you finished with your comments?
I am.
Okay, are there any questions from board members? Comments, questions? Okay, then may I have a motion to recommend the new pregnancy and parenting students before policy be forwarded to the full board for public comment at the April 28th, 2022 board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, the motion passes. Now we have a new policy, student registered sex offenders entry onto school property. Ms. Welsh, you're on again. Thank you. You're on mute.
Thank you. Thanks. So this is a discussion item. The Maryland State Department of Education was required to develop a model policy for registered sex offender students, registered sex offenders and entry onto school property. Previous to this, students were allowed to, if the principal agreed, registered sex offender students would be allowed to be on school property. But the bill that was passed and is now into law and in the model policy says that any student that is on the sexual registry and continues to be a student of record is entitled to receive an education, but is not allowed to enter the property of any public or non-public elementary or secondary school. And so the purpose of the policy is to make sure that we have alternative sources of education for the students so they can meet graduation requirements, like possibly home and hospital teaching, virtual learning, depending on the student. If it were happened to be a special education student, it might be looking at a non-public educational placement. Any type of alternative like that. And the other thing is that the policy does require is that we do communicate to students and parents of the student that the student is not allowed on school property, but will receive an education. And these are the alternatives that we'll be using to make sure they get that education, as well as even if they're not on public while they're in that transition phase, I guess, when they're still getting the alternative type of education, planning and to transition them back to the public schools if in fact they get off the register.
Okay. Okay, are your comments complete?
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from board members or questions? No. Okay. Now tonight, are you recommending Ms. Welsh an action, or are you just introducing this policy to us?
It's just an introduction, and then at the next board meeting, we should have a copy of the policy, a proposed policy for you all to review and possibly take action on it.
Okay, and when you bring the policy back to us, would you also share with us your plan of how to communicate to the public school system this policy, because this policy is going to have far-reaching effects on lives?
So I can provide some information. However, there will definitely be an administrative procedure that goes in place with the policy. And so that administrative procedure, when they develop that, will probably have the details of how specifically they will go about communicating that information. Because it really calls on someone looking, checking the registry, making sure that this is one of our students, and then getting all the information and informing the parent and the student of the situation.
I appreciate that insight. Thank you. Okay, next we have review policy 0107, dear to our hearts, ethics regulations. And Ms. Robinson is going to do this one. Are you Ms. Welch? I have Ms. Robinson on my list.
I think you probably did initially. I think we did say Ms. Robinson, and since then I said I would go ahead and do it. So okay. I will. So just to give a little background, and in fact, it was I think the end of last week that Dr. Golson and probably every superintendent in the state of Maryland received a letter from the General Counsel of the State Ethics Commission. And in the letter informed each of the superintendents that they must go back in and have the Board of Education look at their ethics policy, because two bills got passed in the 2021 General Assembly. It was House Bill 363 and House Bill 1058. And they required certain changes to Board of Ed's ethics policies that relate to conflict of interest provisions and also additional disclosures that boards of ed must incorporate into their ethics policy. So in his letter, the General Counsel's letter, he shares that with the superintendent as well as, or this, in our instance, the CEO, as well as he then references the fact that back in 2017, at that General Assembly, House Bill 879 had been passed, and that had ended up with many changes to the ethics policy. He does say this, and that many school systems never made the changes to their ethics policy. And Prince George's County is one of those school systems. And as you well know, this past year, the changes that we had presented in the past were changes that were required by that House Bill 879. So right now our draft includes those changes. So now we will be going back in and making changes, the new changes from the new bills that just got passed in the 21. And I can just give you, if you want, it's up to you, but I can give a quick, I'll just quickly run through what the—
Yes, I would appreciate that. Thanks.
So there is a requirement to add a definition of quasi-governmental entity in the definition section. There's also a section that we'll have to include, which prohibits gift acceptance from associations that are engaged in representing counties or municipals or corporations. And this is basically going to be showing up, just so you know, in the financial disclosure forms that the Board of Education members must complete. And also, there's a section in the policy that talks about prohibiting the disclosure of confidential information by formal officials or employees. So that will be for all of us. Like if you've worked here, you worked in Prince George's County, and let's say you resigned or retired, and now you have information about Prince George's County about something. It doesn't matter, you no longer work for Prince George's County. You are not allowed to share that confidential information. It also has a provision in it that prohibits retaliation against individuals for reporting ethics violations or participating in ethics investigations. So that'll have to be incorporated into the policy. It then prohibits disclosure of amount of consideration received from the University of Maryland's medical system and any local governmental entities and quasi-governmental entities. It also requires a disclosure of named business trades as or does business with. So for example, if you are an individual, let's say there's a business under this section if you have been dealing with, you would have to disclose other names that that business is trading with under, not just the one name. And then disclosing gifts from associations engaged in only representing counties or municipal corporations is another section. Then disclosing any relationships with the University of Maryland's medical system, state or local government or quasi-governmental entity. And it also requires attributable interest in business entities being disclosed in the financial disclosure form. So it sounds a little complex, but it won't be, you won't see it in this year's financial disclosure forms, but for the following years, much of this will be sitting in that financial disclosure form. But we will go through the current policy that we have, not the one that already we've incorporated the 2017 changes. We will now also incorporate the 2021 changes and bring that back to you at the next Policy and Governance Committee meeting.
Thank you. And Ms. Welch, I really appreciate the time that you've taken to give us this level of detail. It is important for the community to understand that we take our self-governance seriously as a school board and the Prince George's County Public School System. So I appreciate the effort that you've done, and all of the community that's listening. They can go on board docs and they'll see a copy of the policy and the details that Ms. Welch just laid out. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you think we need to have another board meeting, policy and governance meeting in April? Because today we only have one planned. This is a policy that I personally would like to see go to the board and get finalized this fiscal school year, if we could. So what do you?
So I know that in April, we only have one policy committee meeting scheduled, which is I want to say the 26th maybe. But I'm wondering if there might be beneficial, if people thought it would be, that we would have another one scheduled, say April, in 2 weeks, April 12th, and treat April just like the January, February, and March months where we had two. That way also it ensures that we can get also the sexual offender policy in and the Maryland Public Information Act policy in, and so that way, so that they coincide, so that we hit also the board meetings as we move through the end of the year, so that we can move all those policies through. It just would be sort of like a little safeguard to make sure we have enough time to move all the policies through. That's just a thought,
And I appreciate that. So I will ask my fellow board members, what do you think? How do you feel? Oh, Miss Vice President Pamela Boozer Struther.
Thank you. I agree with the suggestion, because I would like to give time for agenda setting for the April 28th board meeting. It seems like it would be good to be ahead of the agenda setting meeting And that gives us a chance to not have any surprises because of that meeting on just 2 days before. So I agree with this proposal.
Ms. Ellis, would you make note of that? Because we have agenda setting meeting tomorrow.
Okay, so can I get a motion that we have another, do I need a motion? I think I do.
What are you
Ms.
trying
Ellis?
to make a motion?
To have a second meeting in April, or can we just say we're gonna have a meeting in April?
We can say that, but is that on our calendar to have 2 meetings in April?
No, so then I need a motion.
Yeah,
I make a motion to hold a policy and governance committee meeting on, is that
April
Tuesday,
12th.
April 12th, 5
Yes.
o'clock?
Okay, it is. We have a motion on the floor. Oh, is it seconded? Thank you, Student Board Member Alvaro Saran Ruiz. We have a motion on the floor. Any questions? Okay, all in favor of having a meeting an additional meeting in April for the Policy and Governance Committee for on April 12th?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. So thank you, Ms. Welch. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the administration recognizing that we needed a little more time in order to meet some of these compliance issues. I appreciate it. Board Member Boozer Struthers, do you have the annotated agenda up? Because I need to find it again. Could you go to the next subject for me?
I do not have it up, but
You don't have it up either.
we're-
Ms. Ellis, can you help me?
Item 4.3, a new policy for school district energy use.
Okay, and we were yielding that
Mhm.
to
Ms.
Ms.
Irving,
Irving?
will you introduce and provide a brief summary of this new policy?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Ms. Irving?
Yes, good evening, Board Chair, Dr. Miller, and Chairman of the Policy and Governance Committee, Ms. Mickens Murray, and members of the committee. I would like to first introduce to you 2 of our colleagues. One is Jamie Alston, who is a management analyst in the Division of Supporting Services in the Department of Building Services, and her colleague, Jason Walker, from the building automation. He's a building automation technician in the Department of Building Services. And they are joining us this evening to discuss House Bill 630, which was passed into law in 2021. The bill is a school district energy use policy and study. We met with Ms. Alston a few weeks ago to discuss the implementation of this piece of legislation. And after speaking to her, we made contact with the chairwoman, Ms. Mickens Murray, to discuss all of the issues that are coming up around the implementation of this piece of legislation, not only from our own school system, but school systems around the state of Maryland who are facing very similar issues regarding the implementation of this particular bill. And so we have Jamie and Jason here to discuss with us in a little bit more detail than I could give you about this bill, its implementation, all of the issues surrounding the bill as it relates to Prince George's County Public Schools older stock of school buildings and all the issues therein. So I will turn the meeting over to, I believe, Jamie. And let me also mention that she's been a member of the Climate Change Action Working Group, and we've been very, very fortunate to have her as part of that working group. She's been a tremendous partner and a friend. And so I'll introduce to you Jamie Alston, who will start the conversation off.
Thank you so much, Ms. Irvin, and good evening again to the board members. We thank you, Jason, teammate Jason and I, we thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening as we all work collectively to really understand what is before us. to really summarize things, we have a situation where we only have but so many natural resources. We're using a lot of energy. We're using a lot of water, and stewardship is imperative. And so it's been a long time coming, but it's now here. Whereas we are mandated, if you will, to begin to record and to document what our buildings are utilizing. And with, as Ms. Irvin has indicated, we have House Bill 630, which is Chapter 608 of Governor Hogan's policy. And that policy is asking that this plan be implemented 1 July, which is the beginning of fiscal year 23 for us, with the first report of data due by 1 October 22. And we certainly are very passionate about all the work that has taken place. We acknowledge Board Member Boozer Struther and all the committee members with the Climate Action Work Group, the student members, Alvaro, and all of their contributions and what you're doing at your respective schools. And it's our desire to want to be able to do a great job and to be able to have good data. And we are also in need of some additional support. So with this House Bill 630, also known as Chapter 608 of Governor Hogan's policy, with that data, they are asking that we utilize the Department of Energy's tool called Portfolio Manager. That is a complementary tool at present, and it will require that all the data for all of our 230 plus facilities, that's each meter. Some schools have more than 1 meter. So at present, we have 3 electric utilities. They are PEPCO, they are BGE, and SMECO. Additionally, we have 2 natural gas utilities, Washington Gas and BGE again. We have 2 water utilities, WSSC Water and City of Bowie Water. And then we also have our heating oil vendors and our propane vendors. So that will require all of the data to be inputted into Portfolio Manager. That is a very time-consuming task. Could it be accomplished? Yes, but we need the resources to do so. Thankfully, with this bill, there is a grant offered for a one-time data input, one time. And we are in the process of applying for that grant. We've reached out to our grants management team and have meetings scheduled with them because that application is due April 20th. So we have a short turnaround time. And with that grant, there are, as I'm learning, there are a lot of different components to establish a grant, a budget analyst, many different aspects of it for many of you that have worked with grants. So again, a time consuming and then additional resources that are required. True energy management, as Jason could tell you, it really involves real-time data. What do I mean by real-time data? Well, it's just like if you wanted to look at your smartwatch right now, if you have one, and wanted to know what your heart rate is. You could look at that. If you wanted to be away from your home and know what your home is consuming, now you have smart devices. And why those meters are important is that a bill is usually 30 days. Sometimes it could be 21, sometimes it could be 31. By the time damage is done, it's already been billed. However, if you have the proper tool, you can get alerts to anomalies. And that's what we need for true energy management, in my opinion, my respectful opinion, and to do a service in true monitoring. Also, on occasion, there are errors with bills. It's very good. It's important to check over bills. Sometimes there could be errors. Having a real-time energy management system will help to match and see what is actually coming forth over from our utilities. Here recently, Washington Gas reached out to us and let us know that they needed to come out and actually read some of our meters because they were having a problem getting readings. And it's my understanding that with some of the remote access, they thought they were doing, many of the utilities were doing a really good deed by putting in some of the remote access points. However, there were some risks to hackings. And as you've probably heard, our utility grid is being monitored continuously for hackings. Over at Washington Gas, if you've ever had the privilege to visit the headquarters of Washington Gas in Virginia, they have 24-hour monitoring of all of the pipeline in the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia. Persons sit at those two desks 24/7. They monitor the pipelines. On those screens, it's real-time data. Those screens flash when there are anomalies. We know the importance of natural gas. We know the danger if there would be too much pressure. And when there is a dire emergency, the system says, Houston, you have a problem. And I'm not telling you anything that's fabricated. I've actually been there and heard it as they've demonstrated their system. So we advocate for, while this policy is asking us to use portfolio manager, we advocate for a more robust system that will allow us at any time to know what's happening in our buildings. This would be ideal if we were ever to have a COVID situation again. We're still in the midst of a pandemic. When we can't get in our buildings, it's important to know what's happening. If we have a leak that's underground, that amasses to 1.2 million gallons of water loss, not only have we not been good stewards, if we had a drought, we would have to answer to, well, why are you using so much water? But if we didn't know that we had a leak, we wouldn't know where to begin to troubleshoot. And we've had situations where we have leaks and we didn't find out until they became billable, to the tune of $25,000, to the tune of $50,000. We can be better good stewards if we have the right tools. And so that's a little bit about that bill. There are other, if you look at the memo that I sent, you will also see some House bills that have come up, House Bill 708, 806, and 831. It is my understanding that those have now fallen under the umbrella of Senate Bill 528. Senate Bill 528 concerns itself with decarbonization and climate solutions now, and that's reducing the greenhouse emissions in our building. That basically means putting in more energy efficient equipment, using less fossil fuels. However, we're at a segment where we're having so many extreme weather events. We're right in the throes of one now, where we've had just unseasonable weather down to the 20s. Then it's supposed to spike up, whereby the meteorologists are talking about tornado spawning in Texas. We know what happened in Texas, what, a couple of winters ago, when persons died because they didn't have an alternative heat source. They relied fully upon electricity. We recognize that, electricity is clean, but I am believing that we need to have alternative fuel sources as well. Our schools in our area are used, some of our schools are used for emergency shelters. If all of our power were to go out, all of our electricity, and it's 20 degrees outside, how are we going to stay warm? So that's pretty much it in summary in terms of my sharing. So these are the ask of us, and we also need to have interdepartmental engagement. This is not a solo act for building services. It requires participation and integration and suggestions from our IT department, perhaps even our security department, to ensure that we have the right security measures in place. We also need support from accounts payables. We've been working for a long time. I've worked with IT, TOPE and ANA, and Mark Lewandowski and Edward Antonetti, Esther Bush. We've all worked together for a long time. We have to fully automate all of our data from our utility bills. We're still getting bills by paper. We need to have things fully automated, which will help us in the data that is required for us. Jason, I'm coming. This is not the only show. I'm going to let you talk. But the other point is that with Portfolio Manager, we have the opportunity to benchmark ourselves with other K-12 LEAs around the US. Now, the other thing that's going to happen is when you log on and you see the Portfolio Manager data, if we have been energy hogs, it's going to show. It's going to show by way of what is called an EUI, Energy Use Intensity Score. There's no hiding. It's going to show the data. So it like at home, when you get your utility bill, you can tell, well, have I been running my thermostat up at a certain level? Have I been using more water? Did I leave my lights on all night? Did I leave my computer on, and so forth? So that energy use intensity score is how you're rated in Portfolio Manager, how you're compared, how you're awarded and rewarded for your good stewardship. So that is what's going to happen once they receive the data that comes over. We're asking if there are any persons amongst us or persons that you know, we're asking for legislation. That legislation go forth that would mandate that all utilities push the data straight over to Portfolio Manager. What does that mean? If they push it straight over to Portfolio Manager, it won't require us to have an FTE to input that. It will reduce the amount of data entry errors, possible data entry errors. And then it would come, the utility would be accountable for what they push over. That's one of our asks. We're also asking that our building automation system that Jason will tell you more about, that it be synchronized and streamlined. We've got so many facilities, they need to be talking to each other to be able to give us the data that we need. We're asking for comfort-based optimal set points for our facilities to reach their desired energy use intensity through Portfolio Manager. If we establish a certain set point, then that means that, if you have certain parameters in your home and you tell your children, no, please, when you leave out, please do not leave the thermostat on a day like today at 80 degrees. Please put it at its proper set point. We can't have overrides, too unnecessarily, because it will affect our energy, not only our energy uses from a cost perspective, but also from our stewardship, as well as from our energy use intensity score. Some of these efforts that we're asking for may even involve an ASHRAE, which is the American Society of Heating and Refrigeration and Air Conditioner Engineers, to come in and do a high level, level 3 audit. That will let us know, and the consultants to let us know what is possible at an older building, because we have a veritable plethora of ages of buildings in our district. We're unique in that, and we've talked, board member Boozer Strother, during our climate action work groups, we've talked about the possibility to retrofit buildings. Does this opportunity exist for some of our older buildings? And some of these consultants could be of assistance to us with that. Finally, we're asking to think about demand response opportunities that would occur most of the time in your hot summer months, July and August. I don't know if any of you participate in BGE's home residential program. Usually in August, they will have an opportunity for you to save on your utility bill just by adjusting your thermostat. Adjusting your thermostat and the things that you plug in and utilize. We have that opportunity, or opportunities exist where we just would curtail for an hour or two, and the energy savings are tremendous. The summer also typically tends to be the month that our multiplier is our KW demand, kilowatt demand multiplier. is created, and then that stays with us for a year. So if we were able to reduce, these are behavior modifications and things that we put in place, then that's additional energy savings. And finally, as I shared a little bit a few minutes ago about Texas, I talked about having a sustainability resilience plan. What will we do, during a power outage or more when we're having more extreme weather events? How will we maintain, what we do for our children, whether it be instruction in the classroom or if it has to be instruction at home, and how do we maintain and keep everything up? Jason?
Thank you, Jamie. That's a very hard person. You're a very hard person to come behind and follow up on. But my name is Jason Walker, and me and my colleague Jason Hassett both run the building automation department within PG County Schools. So around the 80s, the 90s, prior to that, HVAC systems are controlled by air, or pneumatic systems. So as technology advances, we start controlling things more with direct digital controls. So we're able to integrate all of our systems, or HVAC systems, into one centralized system, so we can see what all the buildings are doing, temperatures. We're able to make set point adjustments, control HVAC systems. Our systems have the capability of actually integrating security, which we don't do, but lighting control. There's multiple things you can integrate into the building automation system. Right now, our systems are, you have at 50-50, we still have a lot of pneumatics left in buildings. We have a lot of buildings that we can't see temperatures. We have no clue what's going on within the building. Everything's locally controlled. But all of our buildings have, with the exception of one school, which is getting transferred over this summer, some form of digital controls in it. Mostly it's the centralized plants, the boilers, the chillers. So we're able to see what they're doing on a regular basis. And we have some schools that are fully automated. All of our new HVAC projects, systemics, new construction, all go full digital controls. And those are the schools we have the most control over as far as energy savings. We're able to change temperatures. We're able to put units on schedules, turn equipment off at night when it's not needed. I guess going over policy, what Jamie said, temperature control policy would be a great, I think that would be the best start for energy savings within the county. We have standardized temperatures, but they're very, very old. And some of the temperatures, in my opinion, are not inclusive to a learning environment. Just to give you an idea, we have temperature set points that we call for secondary schools to be classroom 65 degrees. That's the heating set point in the classroom. That's our standard. These are policies that were set in bulletin S-46-96. It's something that needs to be looked over and just upgraded. Since we've started here, we have done a lot of things, controls replacements within schools, going through and replace control systems that are not working correctly. And in turn, we're able to save money and utilities. We're able to increase occupant comfort, and we're able to help with environmental aspects. Control systems have a big play in, and ventilation. And, the number one thing to help, combat COVID is fresh air ventilation in the buildings. And we're able to go through and fix a lot of our ventilation systems through controls. Control systems are the main systems that control that equipment in the buildings. Another thing we're able to help is mold. We have schools that are older and the equipment, we have humidity issues in schools. And as we fix these control systems, we notice a dramatic increase or a dramatic difference in the environmental aspect of the buildings. Going through and what does it look like for putting meters in the buildings? So me and Jamie had a long conversation about being able to see on a live updated basis of what our energy consumptions are in buildings. Currently, I think we have 2 or 3 buildings within the county that actually monitor energy. None of the other ones do. Multiple schools have multiple meters, so we need multiple electrical, monitoring within buildings. We have, as far as the electrical system, we even have, services in the building, electrical services that are old. So when you're putting electrical meters on the old services, anytime you touch something that's, 30, 40 years old, you're asking for trouble. We also have the capability of monitoring water and natural gas. But these are all things that need to be piped in, meters that have to be physically put into buildings, controllers that have to be installed, and IT support to get things running over IT's backbone network to get back to a centralized system. I really don't have anything else. Jamie, is there anything else you want to kind of talk about?
You did great, Jason. I think you covered everything. Thank you so much for that input. I think maybe if there are any questions, we shared a lot and we didn't mean to overshare or to share information that was too complex.
I mean, are you done? Have you finished, Ms. Alston?
Yes, ma'am. The only last point I would like to say is that, as I said earlier, is that, our students have done a great job, and our educators, we're beneficiaries of the energizing student performance program, where our students are learning about energy, and we're really doing our best to also expose those students and give them the opportunity through workforce development, energy workforce development, to really learn and to participate and take ownership of their school, to be energy champions. And this is one of the things that's going to be required also with the policy that this bill requires, that we have a district policy. So we have to come up with what's going to be doable for us, what works for us, what we can implement, as well as what we can continue to report out through portfolio manager. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Ms. Irvin?
I just want to commend both Jamie Alston and Jason Walker for what they do on behalf of Prince George's County Public Schools, because as we've been learning throughout this past year, what an incredible group of professional employees that we have working in the system, that just we should be very proud of what they all do every single day on behalf of students and staff inside these buildings. So thank you for that. And for all of the members of the committee, I just wanted to underscore 2 or 3 things, if that's okay, Ms. Mickens-Murray, as it relates to this bill. And in the bill, a couple of the things that I think that both Jamie and Jason spoke about was the difficulties that the system has in making all of this actually work. So the bill says that a school district energy policy must, 1, address the purchasing, conservation, and efficiency of energy for the school district. It must provide for the monitoring and reporting of the amount of electricity used from renewable energy sources, the percentage of the school district's annual electricity use that is from renewable energy sources, and the school district's overall electricity use by source and square foot. And I think if you all could respond to the question here before the chairman turns it over to her committee, and that is, why is it really difficult for the system to respond to the bill's requests to do all of those things?
Currently, we don't have a tool in place that could just push the data correctly straight out back to portfolio manager. We also have so many bills that come in by paper, and the amount of time that's required. We could do the square footage of a building, but when you break it down into the square footage by kilowatt, that does take some time to do the calculations for that. And it's just the amount of time, the time and effort to have it done without additional support. And in the time frame, they're looking for us to implement it July 1st. And we are now basically at April, the 5th month, and we would have 4 months until July 1, as well as to begin reporting data October 1st.
Ms. Irvin, are you finished? Ms. Alston, are you finished?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'd like to hear from the board members now, and I see Vice Chair Boozer-Struther's hand up.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Ms. Alston and Mr. Walker. So as I think all of you can tell, Ms. Alston was probably our most outstanding contributor on the Climate Change Action Plan Work Group, who kept, along with Don Holton from Capital Projects, who kept us real, who at all points in time explained to us how our systems work and what we would need to do to get to the 100%, the efficiency and the clean energy schools that we want to get to by 2040, by 2030 and 2040. And I can't thank her enough. And it's such a pleasure that we're implementing the plan already. And I did want to let you know that before this call, for the meeting, I did meet with the current chair of the Operations Budget Fiscal Affairs Committee board member, Kenneth Harris, who is on top of these issues and ready to do their part from the Operations and Budget Committee, because we know that this is going to be a conversation, this is going to have to be worked through from both committees. And I did want to also call out some of the other benefits. We know from the plan that this is top of what we need to do to understand our systems and become more efficient. This data, it should also be able to measure like subsets of buildings so that we could really understand buildings built. I think about the educational facilities master plan and school replacement or these opportunities to retrofit, that understanding energy use can be a critical component of those decisions. And these new LEED silver buildings that are solar ready that are coming, as part of the alternative construction financing, we could take those 6 middle schools and really show against 6 existing middle schools the annual cost to run our buildings. And I think that is a really compelling aspect of why we are pushing on school construction and retrofitting. And I wanted to ask you if that data is going to help with that as well.
Yes, thank you, board member Boozer Strother. Yes, that data would help because the data is going to would be able to, if we have the right tools, it will be able to produce, and you can produce the results that you intend for, and you can subset, you can group buildings together, like square footage buildings together, the new alternative construction financing group together. We just recently renovated Central High School. And so we're now addressing, the changes that were made to see if that is a model that we like to follow for high schools or other buildings that are that size, if this model works to help produce more energy savings.
Yeah, I think it's just, this data is just critical to all of our future decision making. So anything we could do to help with policy, and I think, I would share with everyone that the committed volunteers who served on this work group really understand legislation in Annapolis. We even had Delegate Mary Lehman, District 21, serving, who we can go to for good legislation that helps us advance our operational readiness to make these changes. So I think that's another aspect of what we accomplished this past year, is that we're ready. We now have the partners in place to move on policy that will help us. So of course, I love this conversation. I could chat a lot more, but I know we need to move on to the policy aspect of it. So I will pause there and turn it back to the chair.
Yeah.
Can I just piggyback off of what Jamie said real quick? As we add more control systems to these buildings and make these buildings more energy efficient, we also make the systems more complex. These are still mechanical systems, so we also have to realize that the support is needed to be able to maintain these systems. These systems, I mean, an old air handler from a school built in the 90s and the early 2000s may have 1 or 2 sensors on it. And then you look at an air handler like at Central High School, has over 60 sensors on these air handlers. And these are just devices that need to be maintained. And we need to keep that in mind as we go for higher level LEED schools, net zero schools. We need to keep that in mind as a budget item to maintain these systems.
Absolutely. I think also it gives us an opportunity with the data to really put our vendors to the test. So if we choose to purchase a Fulton boiler, I'm just calling out names, or if we choose to get a DOAS unit, and their feature benefit says, oh, well, we ascribe to do this. Well, our data puts them, holds them accountable to say, oh, well, you indicated that this would do this, but here's our data here. Can you help explain why we are not seeing significant energy savings? We retrofitted the lights at Charles Flowers High School, a BGE powered school, back in the summer of 2019. And we'd had some high utility bills there because of the variable frequency drivers. But when we retrofitted with LED lighting, it did bring the utility bills down some, but that's just the low hanging fruit area. You still, as Jason said, we have to get the proper PM and preventative maintenance and the proper scheduling, and also just to observe to see if the vendor or the particular equipment is yielding what they are touting to give us by us choosing their equipment.
Okay, I appreciate this. Mr. Walker, your hand is still up. Okay, I appreciate this discussion. I have a couple of questions, but I want to hear from the student board member. Do you have any questions or concerns? No? Okay. First, it seems to me like the board needs a work session on this. And the first question I will ask is that, did either of you prepare a proposal and take it back to the CEO after the work in the work group and outline, or at least list in a priority order, those things that you believe that you need to move forward? Because all the resources that I hear, I believe, has a fiscal note. Do you already have this portfolio manager, or is it something that you wish to get? I'm trying to clarify your request here. Is the request to support a bill that has come up in the legislation, or is your request for to take something to the board for the board to entertain? As far as you mentioned a grant, which I believe might be in this bill, okay. And then you also mentioned that we are out of compliance because although we're attempting to do some things, we have an archaic system that doesn't speak to each other to help you to get the data that you need. Am I hearing that correctly or incorrectly?
I'm sorry.
And it's okay if I'm wrong. You can tell me.
I see board member Spooter Struthers' hand. I didn't know if she wanted to say something or.
Well, I wanted to hear from you two first because you gave us a lot of information.
Yes, ma'am.
And you know this system.
Okay.
Based on the information that you just shared. You know this system well.
Okay. Yes,
I'm understanding that.
Yes, ma'am.
So my question is a simple one. Have you presented the same information to the administration for the administration to act on? In other words, identifying some resources that may be already in the system, or maybe they need to come to the board and say, boy, we don't have any money, we can't help them, but we need you to help them.
Yes. Most recently.
So I'm trying to clarify, what is the ask here?
Okay, got you. Yes, ma'am. To answer your question, no, ma'am, we have not. We've had conversations with our COO, and we do projects all the time between capital programs and building services. But to specifically outline, everything, we have Dawn, our mechanical engineer, who's, as board member Boozer Strother said, she's constantly communicating information from her aspect as the mechanical engineer. With regards to this particular bill, portfolio manager comes complementary as a tool.
Okay.
Comes complementary, yet the requirement, utilizing that grant will help us to get someone who will be able to input all of the data required under this bill into portfolio manager one time only. But that would have to be continuous input.
Okay.
manual input.
Okay, so what I heard you, what I believe I heard you say is that you've not presented a proposal or anything to the administration.
No,
So you're
ma'am.
talking to us and raising the issue here tonight. I appreciate that. Now, Mrs. Boozer Struthers.
Yeah, and I was just reviewing the legislation, this past last year, at a time where, we were very, focused on COVID. And so this past, I think ultimately May 30th, I guess, 2021. So the legislation is that we have to have an energy policy. So there's a response that we have to write what that policy is. So, it definitely seems like it's going to take more conversation with administration to actually meet this legislation. This legislation is, certainly welcome and a catalyst, but, now, but it was ahead of talking to school districts.
Mhm.
What we tried to do with our climate change action plan work is that we know our system so we can talk to legislators before they legislate.
Right, exactly.
We're kind of in a situation where we are having to write a policy while we are in the midst of about to make some systemic change that once the climate change action plan goes through the board in late April and then becomes a document for Dr. Goldson to implement. I think these deeper dive conversations of the how chair that you're asking about would be had, but that's, doesn't help us with a July 1 deadline of writing a policy.
And that's my concern. And I think Ms. Irvin can attest to the fact that every time I hear a mandate, when I'm in that May legislative committee meeting, the first thing I ask myself is, what do we have in place today that will help us to meet this mandate with the data? I understand how archaic our system is. I get that. But we also have legislators in Annapolis that represent us. And we can have those conversations with them even after they pass a bill or while they're passing a bill. So that's where I am. But I also recognize that the administration and the Board of Education needs to understand the same thing around what it is we can do and what it is we cannot do. We need to understand that together. So, so I guess I'm going to ask one more time. From this meeting tonight, this bill has already passed, correct? And we're already locked into the mandate of having to create this policy, correct? You are saying that you're hampered from doing that because we have some systems that doesn't talk to some systems, right? Correct?
Not exactly. Let me try to
Okay.
re-explain myself. I'm sorry.
Please.
So our systems communicate to each other. They work. Well, a lot of our systems are old, but as we do construction projects, things get replaced. What I'm trying to relay is some of the mandates as far as energy metering are looking into metering and understanding what our systems are doing. That stuff is not in place. So to install that system and support the system, we would have to increase what we're doing, right? But what we're doing right now, our systems are in place. We have actually talked to, I personally talked to my superiors, and we are working at a plan as far as maintaining systems. It's currently in the works, but I just wanted to make sure we knew that going forward as these mandates come out, and we get more efficient buildings, more buildings with controls, it comes with more responsibility, more maintenance.
Right, but right now to get the data is more cumbersome.
Yes, that's correct.
That's the issue. It's more cumbersome
That's
because of our systems being old. I'll use old. Okay, so I understand that. So.
Well, I'm not clear. What is it we need to do to get
Okay.
started to address what is being asked of us in developing the policy? And in terms of what Ms. Alston shared with us, I guess what I would always call it, playing with this computer, what would be the fiscal notes around getting what's needed to collect the data
Right,
and
the
then
additional system.
move on into the kind of policy that we need?
And that's what I was asking them, Chair Miller, because in my mind, a proposal has to be made by somebody and identify what that fiscal note is. Now, I realize that you guys are in the process now of writing the policy. I realize also that in your minds, do you write the policy that says it's going to take us 12 months to do something that if we had it automated would take a week? I get that as well. But the conversation has to start with a proposal going to the administration and the administration letting us, the board, know what is it that you want us to help you get? What is it? And then we can try to peel back that onion and try to address that. At least that is what I see. Ms. Jameson, Ms. Alston.
Let me rewind just a little bit. With the bill, House Bill 630, and the complementary portfolio manager and the grant that is offered, we submit the application by April 20th of this year, we would be considered for that grant that would allow us to have a resource, that being someone or somebody's, who would input all of our utility data to satisfy at least the initial portion of this bill. We also are given the opportunity, the template and the policy that's already out there from MEA, we are allowed to utilize that, what they already have in place, if we so choose to. If we agree with everything that it's already established in a template, they've given us the opportunity, not just us, but other LEAs also, the opportunity to utilize what is already out there. It's just whether or not we believe as a system, we can comply with all that is written currently in what IAC has there. The other
And I
part,
understand, yes, ma'am. I hate to cut you off, but I know the student has somewhere to go, but I'm also saying to you, I understand that.
okay,
I understand your limitations. I get it.
okay,
But I'm still, the administration also has to communicate that to us, which means that your proposal needs to go through your administration.
okay,
In your administration, we can have all the conversations we want to have.
okay,
But until I see, because I speak as one board member, the rest of us, we have to vote on it.
okay,
But I need to see a document that the CEO has signed and said, yes, we need these things, but also we're doing 1, 2, 3 to meet a deadline, but to make it easier, or better, or quicker, we need 1, 2, 3 ABC. That's where I am. I am not trying to put anybody under the bus, and I'm not disparaging anybody.
yes, ma'am.
I'm letting you know, yes, I understand it, but I also want to respect what I believe is the process, okay?
We're
Let
happy
me,
to put together a proposal, and we can put all the wish lists. It could be Christmas for us in
well,
April.
you need to give it to the CEO first before you bring it to the board. I think
Yes,
we
sir.
have a document that the work group put together with some recommendations in it. I
Okay.
think that has already been semi-presented to the board and coming back to the boards. I recognize that around climate change.
Okay.
But what I hear you saying is we have a mandate that we have to meet by July 1st, and that you're already in the process of doing some things. But
Yes.
if you had some additional resources, it would be easier.
Yes,
Okay?
ma'am. Yes,
I get that. All right. Ms. Boozer Struthers, I'm gonna go to Welsh first, and then I'll come back to you, if you don't mind. Robin? You're muted.
Thank you. The only thing I wanted to point out that the bill also says that in adopting or updating the school district's energy policy, each school district is encouraged to set targets to increase the school district use of energy, renewable energy, and reduce the school district's greenhouse gas emissions. So I'm thinking, even if we don't have it all happening right this moment, maybe some of the language within the policy is directed towards where we want to go and what our end goal is and what targets we're attempting to reach.
Okay, that's a good suggestion. I appreciate that. And I hope that Ms. Alston and Mr. Walker hears that, because I think that's a good suggestion. Okay, Vice Chair Boozer Struthers.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, I was just going to note that the writing of this policy, I think much of it, to some extent, we've written into the energy section of the Climate Change Action Plan. But I did want to ask if any of the agencies provided a model policy like we often see from MSDE, if this came out of the IAC or I see that this is IAC, MEA, and Maryland Clean Energy Center, were part of this. If anyone did draft a model policy, and then we could plug in, our own, energy goals that we've already set.
To answer your question, yes, they did provide it. We're allowed to use it, and we can, edit, add, delete, however we want it to customize it for us, for Prince George's County Public Schools.
So, Ms. Irvin, do you have a copy of that model policy? Ms. Welsh, either one?
I do not have a model policy in front of me, but it's easy to get a hold of a model policy, yes.
Okay, well, maybe that should be shared with the committee. Okay, thank you. Chair Miller.
I'm back on the ask in terms of funding for what is needed to bring these data systems up to par. And I didn't hear fiscal note on that. And the reason I'm back on that issue is that every year, according to what the documentation I've seen, every year there's so much money that's going back into the dark hole that we don't use, board members don't use. And because we can't donate it or anything, why can't we reallocate? But you have to do it before the timeline that's been set in April, I think, to what's it called? Reallocate it.
Right.
As a title. Do you all understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I really do. And I will suggest this: if Ms. Alston and Mr. Walker can come up with a proposal with the fiscal note and give it to the CEO before that date that the chair just mentioned, there may be an opportunity to do that. But we need to know what the dollars are that you're asking for to help you with your systems. Recognizing that, yes, we all recognize that you need help and appreciate your sharing that, okay?
And I don't know whether the budget, whether OBAFA is going to meet tomorrow or not, but if we can get some figures from you, we can put that proposal before the whole board and move it forward so that, I can't think of that term, what it's called, basic realignment, whatever it's called, where you move money from one place to another.
Well, it is realignment, but Madam Chair, you and I are saying the same thing. We're just going about it with two approaches. Instead of them coming directly to us with the fiscal note or to the budget OBAFA committee, I still believe they need a sign off because priorities are made within the system. And there are many folks looking for dollars. It's not just for this initiative. So we have to balance all of that. That's all I'm saying. We're not saying your initiative is not worthy. We are, but it's competing with other stuff. And I realized that we have a compliance to meet, but I like Ms. Welch's suggestion of we create targets. Can't do everything at once. And those targets can come with fiscal notes. But you need to start with the CEO. Please.
Okay, that's where you and I aren't seeing eye to eye in terms of going back to the CEO. They represent the CEO. They're the components.
When I see a signature, I'll believe it. I mean, I'm not saying that they don't, but I think I heard Ms. Alston say that what they presented to us tonight, they had not really presented it to the CEO. Or did I misunderstand that?
Our point of contact has been, with our COO.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's our point of contact, with.
But then maybe that's who you go back to. He has the money.
As well as our associate superintendent, so Dr. Coleman and Dr.
Yeah.
Fawcett.
Yeah, so maybe that's where you go
Sam-
back to,
Sam
because
Stefanelli, our director.
the COO, doesn't he meet with OBAFA, I guess? Or not?
Yes.
Okay, then, so there you are.
She just
Leave
doesn't
it
want to
in.
give you all that money tonight.
I can't give you any money. I have no money. But I do believe it's a worthy
I
initiative.
think so too, especially when
So
you're
we
being
just
pressed.
need to
So
figure out that vehicle to get it.
Jason and I are happy to comply with your request.
Yes.
Do we have like a drop dead deadline? You said you're meeting tomorrow?
No,
Okay.
ABAFA, I don't know when.
No,
when
we're not
ABAFA
meeting
meets.
tomorrow.
Okay.
But,
When would we need to get?
Board Member Boozer Struthers, you talked to Board Member Kenneth Harris. When are they meeting? Do you know, Anise, Miss Ellis? You're on mute.
I don't have it on my calendar that we're meeting next week.
I don't
I
see,
think that the cutoff date is in April, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, it will be April next week.
Yeah, that's
So
fine.
anyway, we all understand the urgency.
Okay.
I think between Ms. Irving and Ms. Welch, they can help Mr. Walker and Ms. Alston figure it out and get whatever document it is that we need for both committees, the OBAFA committee and for this committee. Are we in agreement?
Understood.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry, Alvaro Ruiz, but you have the floor for House Bill 797.
Thank you, Board Member Mickens Murray, and I'm actually going to yield my time. I know we added this to the agenda, but I will yield my time to move on to the next item. Recognizing how close we are to sign die, in our next board meeting being, I think, like 3 days before sign die. And so I know there are other means, I mean, sending individual letters as a student or as a citizen. But thank you for the opportunity to actually speak. But I will yield my time, and I think I will step away now from the meeting, but thank you.
We
so
appreciate that, and I'm sorry, and we know that you have something else.
Thank you,
to
Ms.
do.
Alston and Mr. Walker for coming today to speak on this matter, and I hope to see it in our future P&G meetings or at the BAFA committee, wherever it's going next. And yeah, so I'll see everyone pretty soon.
Okay, thank
Alvaro,
you.
I sent you an email. Please check it. I was asking about
I
your,
responded.
oh, you did? This,
Yep.
no, I'm talking about the second email. The chaperone.
Yep, I responded to that one too.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Good.
All right, good night.
All
everyone.
right, bye. See you this weekend. Ms. Alston and Mr. Walker, I truly appreciate your attending this meeting, and I'm hoping that more organizations or departments within the administration will do the same. Because once we understand something, then we understand how to make the decisions around it. So thank you so much. And the information you gave was in depth and appreciated. So it's really appreciated.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Ms. Urban. Thank you, Ms. Welsh. Thank you, board members, Boozer Struther, as well as all other board members. We appreciate all that you do, and thank you for hearing us.
Yes, we heard you.
It was
You were heard. You were definitely heard.
We heard you
And we
loud
will
and
be
clear.
we will be most appreciative, most
Okay,
appreciative.
you heard. All right, thank you. And if you guys want to stay, feel free to stay, but if you want to leave, we understand.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
next we have MABE Legislative Committee, and I will yield the floor to Ms. Irvin.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the Policy and Governance Committee. On Monday, March 28th, Board Member Mickens Murray and I attended the MABE Legislative Committee to discuss some of the 2022 legislative session bill highlights. Many of these bills have been discussed before this committee and at the past 2 Board of Education meetings. Last week at the Board of Education meeting, 11 bills were considered and voted on by the board. Letters of support for those bills are in the process of being sent to the respective committee chairs of jurisdiction. Meanwhile, I will address the status updates of some of the bills that are still being discussed in committee as we enter the final days of this legislative session. I'm going to begin with the operating budget FY 2023 funding. That would be Senate Bill 290, budget bill. On February 22nd, Governor Hogan released a $480 million supplemental budget to the Maryland General Assembly that directs $139.9 million towards programs outlined in the blueprint for Maryland's future. Governor Hogan expressed that he looks forward to working with the legislature to create a final budget that delivers record investments in education. On March the 10th, 2022, the Board of Revenue Estimates, which includes State Comptroller Peter Francho, State Treasurer Derek Davis, and Secretary of Budget and Management David Brinkley, received a very positive presentation on the condition of Maryland's economy and approved revised revenue estimates that increase the state's projected budget surplus by $1.6 billion. This revision increases the total projected surplus to more than $7.5 billion over the next 2 years. This is good news, and it's resulted in immediate action to temporarily cease collecting the state sales tax on gasoline and will likely impact a number of legislative initiatives pending in Annapolis. We're moving on to education funding and policy. We discussed in this committee and at the board House Bill 1426, primary and secondary education maintenance of effort requirements. The bill requires for fiscal 2023 county governments to appropriate local funds to the public school operating budget in an amount not less than the greater of 1, the per pupil maintenance of effort for fiscal 2023 or 2022-2023. The county's fiscal local appropriation minus any applicable federal COVID-19 funding received by the county that is used to exceed MOE in fiscal 2022. County governments also remain subject to minimum appropriations resulting from the requirement to provide the local share of major education effort. And this bill will take effect June 1 of 2022. MABE is obviously in support of this legislation and urges its passage. The next bill that I've highlighted is House Bill 1290. I spoke to the chairman of this committee, Board Member Mickens Murray, about this bill earlier today. It's the public school construction funding and administration. This bill passed in the House and will be heard in the Senate. Actually, it was heard on the Senate today. So I haven't received the updated information as of yet until I'm out of this meeting, which I will go and find out what might have happened. But MABE supports House Bill 1290 because it's aligned with MABE's legislative priorities, including the $400 million baseline amount for annual investments in the state capital improvement program. And Board Member Mickens Murray, I'll go ahead and add to that conversation that the governor has placed another $50 million in this, this fund for state capital improvement programs for school construction. And in our conversation with the other members of different boards of education across Maryland, there was a little jealousy that came through about how Prince George's County is the only county in the state of Maryland. And I think it's actually in the country that has a P3 that is up and running, signed, sealed, and delivered. And we are very, very proud of the fact that we will be delivering, I think it's 13 schools with the P3 funding. So Board Member Mickens Murray has to just smile and nod when this conversation comes up. The next bill, we're all talking about this bill, Climate Solutions Now Act, Senate Bill 528. And as we heard in conversation just this evening earlier, when Jamie Alston mentioned some bills that were standalone climate bills that are now folded underneath the Climate Solutions Now Act, which is Senator Penske's bill. That bill, as of today, is still receiving amendments. So we still have a couple more weeks left of the legislature. That bill will continue to move, I believe. It will look very different. It's looking more and more different every day. As a matter of fact, I think they even took out of this bill the net zero schools requirement, which is bad news for people who are advocates for climate solutions. That has just come out in the last 24 hours, I think. Skipping ahead to, let's see, House Bill 1301, Senate Bill 706. This was a very important bill. This was the one that's the non-public education programs, children with disabilities, cost of teacher salaries. This bill essentially will require the 24 LEAs to fund private school teachers who teach the very, very difficult to place special education students. So the students, for example, that attend at Krieger, what this bill is asking is for the Senate to provide funding for those teachers in private schools, because public schools send our students to those facilities. MABE is obviously opposed to this legislation. However, it looks like it's on the road to passage. So because of that, MABE is asking that if this bill passes, they would like the funding requirement to go to the state and not to the local jurisdictions. So we're definitely following this. It's not in a situation where it's ready for passage. As a matter of fact, this bill, well, it did pass in the Senate and will be heard in the House on March 31st. So we'll be keeping our eye on that. All of the superintendents and PZAM and MABE are opposed to that legislation. We've covered this bill on student safety, security, and discipline. It's House Bill 84, crimes on school grounds. There were amendments in the Senate that exclude students who are on exclusionary discipline from coverage under the bill. Senate Bill 199 passed the Senate, was heard in the House on March 24th. So it looks like it passed as introduced and will be heard in the Senate. That date has not been determined. So we've been following that bill for 2 months now. So we're see where it goes. Skipping ahead to virtual schools. This has been a very controversial bill. This is Senator Penske's bill. It's Senate Bill 362, primary and secondary education, virtual schools. And as introduced, this bill changes the requirements for a local board of education or MSDE to establish a virtual school and sets requirements for students, teachers, and services at a virtual school. The bill requires a local school system to be limited to only one virtual school. However, MSDE may authorize a local school system to establish a second virtual school on showing of just cause. And we know what just cause was in 2 years past, and that is COVID was just cause for school systems to implement standalone virtual schools. So this bill is trying to curb how many of those schools actually crop up. However, as Board Member Mickens Murray can tell you, there was a long conversation about how our friends and colleagues on the Eastern Shore of Maryland and in rural school districts who have a lot of trouble hiring and attracting teachers put themselves together into a consortium that, and they run virtual schools standalone because they can't recruit enough teachers to teach in school buildings. So Chairman Mickens-Murray will have to, and I will keep you apprised as that continues to make its way through these last couple of weeks in Annapolis. And then interesting bill, the last one we covered yesterday was House Bill 603, which is considered a local bill, but I think it's interesting for this committee to hear that conversation. It was Harford County Board of Education appointment of members. This bill eliminates the role of the governor in appointing the 3 appointed members to the Harford County Board of Education. Instead, the bill requires a Harford County executive to select the appointed members. What was interesting about the conversation was back in 2013, MABE did something that it normally doesn't do. It got involved in Prince George's County's bill that changed the makeup of the Prince George's County Public Schools, and it supported an all-elected board, and so it was in the wrong place. So now MABE is like taking its hands off as it relates to these kind of bills, but it says here MABE adopted a legislative position on local government appointing authority, provides that MABE opposes bills expanding initial board appointment authority to local governments. So I thought that ended on an interesting note. Many of the bills that you will see that are posted on board docs in this report, we have reported on at least 3 different times. So we've been out in front, and thanks to the leadership of Chairman Mickens-Murray, and I think that we have done a really good job trying to capture for this committee where these bills are going and how these bills overlap policy. So if there are any questions, I will take them now.
Before we entertain questions, I'd like to mention first, I may have to stop the meeting because I only have 2 board members and I need 3 is what I have been informed. But before we adjourn, I wanted to mention House Bill 1163, Ms. Irvin, because just as Ms. Jamie Alston, Ms. Alston and Mr. Walker just said, this bill would require us to have a learning management system, and in conjunction with MSDE. Now, this, if it passes in their meeting today, Ms. Irvin, it would be August 31st, 2022, that they would want to implement it. So once again, we're being required to gather data in a system, and I need to know if we already have a system or not. I don't know. Okay, so yes, ma'am, Ms. Irvin.
Thank you for reminding me, Board Member Mickens-Murray. So I did do a little bit of a dive on this bill this afternoon. And so the next steps here are for me to schedule a meeting with Dr. Judy White to see what it is that we are doing internally. And I went and I looked at MABE's position, the testimony that was given. One of them that I pulled up that I thought was interesting was testimony given by Anne Arundel County that found that they thought this was a slippery slope, what the bill's sponsor was asking. And this is a sponsor from Prince George's County, and many of you know him, Miss Delegate Washington. So I will follow up with this committee next meeting that we have on April 12th. Board Member Mickens-Murray has asked me to see what the administration is doing on this. So I'm scheduling a meeting with Dr. White to discuss that with her.
I appreciate that. And with that said, I need to end the meeting because, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
You don't have to end the meeting. You have 3 board members. I'm an ex officio, just can't vote on anything.
That's what I was thinking, but I wasn't going to say that, but that's fine. Okay, so we only
Unless you
have,
just
Exactly,
wanna
but
end
you
the meeting.
can't, how will you adjourn? That was
how will we adjourn?
you need 3 votes to adjourn. That's
Well,
Miss.
then we're gonna be here all night and all week. That doesn't make sense. So we will adjourn. I get what you're saying. Okay, so let's continue then with information. We're providing information, especially to the public. So Ms. Irvin, did you finish?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So now we will go to Ms. Vice Chair Boozer Struthers with the blueprint.
Yeah, thank you so much. So Blueprint for Maryland's Future Act implementation and accountability, and update on as we're progressing in our policy and governance committee's relationship with administration and our role of oversight as the accountability board is up and running, and so waiting on some legislation around timelines of reporting and all of that. So, we've had to move, the administration's had to move forward, somewhat independently, get these reports out. And there will be a report posted April 1st to the PGCPS website. The board received, the full board received a preview of that. And then I think from that point forward, in my discussion with Dr. Goldson, that Dr. Libby and her team will get on a regular schedule with us. So this legislation is about to pass, and we're all in alignment to have a regular reporting schedule through this committee. So that's the update for 5.2. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Vice Chair Boozer Struther. Now, 6.0, follow-ups and next steps. The follow-up from previous meetings will be posted on board docs upon receipt. At our March 24th, 22 Board of Education meeting, the board voted to send revised policy 5143, bullying, harassment, or intimidation, out for public comment. You may submit your comment by visiting the Board of Education webpage by clicking comment on Board of Education proposed policies. Comments will close on Monday, April 11th at 5 p.m. The next Policy and Governance Committee meeting will be held on Tuesday, April 12th at 5 p.m. virtually. Please check the board page on the PGCPS website for more information. With that said, since I don't have a quorum, I will end the meeting. Thank you, guys. I appreciate all that everyone has done. And Ms. Irvin, Vice Chair Boozer Struthers, thank you so much. The speakers today, they were excellent. And we need to do more of that. So I appreciate it. Thanks. Ms. Ellis, I'm going to end the meeting and you defend me.
Yes, the meeting has to end. Good night, everyone.
Good night, guys.